Today we are deepening our understanding of the animal soul and the godly soul's relationship. So essentially we're getting to know ourselves better in our own inner world and what's going on in there. So the analogy that the altar ever brings is that the body is a small city. So you imagine like this. Each soul is a king who wants total and complete sovereignty over that small city. So you think about it, you are a small city, right? There's so much going on inside of us, so many facets, so many different parts. And both kings want full and total control. You don't want to be king over half the city. It doesn't work like that. If so, you're not the king, right? For either soul to claim kingship, then you want full rule over our thought, speech, and actions, over our body, over our being, and our systems. So let's look at this quote from Genesis that will help us understand the idea. And one nation shall overpower the other nation. So this is talking about, you guessed it, Yaakov and Esau, right? So there cannot both rule at the same time, Jacob and his brother Esau. Each soul wants to overpower the other soul's influence over the body so they can have total sovereignty over our thought, speech, and action. Your divine soul desire and will is for exclusive rule over you and your conduct, and that all your limbs should obey and surrender themselves completely to it, becoming its exclusive vehicle of expression, and be a vehicle of expression for its 10 intellectual and emotional powers. Those are the 10 soul powers we've been speaking about, and 3 garments of sacred thought, speech, and action. Meaning, the divine soul wants holy thoughts, holy speech, holy actions. The godly soul plan of attack is head over heart. The ability for the head to rule over the heart is really the main superpower of how the godly soul is ultimately successful in ruling over the small city. By pondering his unfathomable and infinite greatness with one's Chachma Bina, a person will achieve Da'at, which will give birth to awe of God in his mind and love of God in his heart. So basically, by thinking about how awesome Hashem is, right, just look at a leaf and trip out for a few minutes. Like, wow, like the details of every single molecule that God puts into this world is extraordinary. The patterns, the shapes, the colors, the texture. And you really think about that with your Chachma Bina, with your cognitive powers, you're going to get to, boom, Das. Once you get to Das, you're already having an emotional connection. You're already thinking about, how does this connect to me? Wow, right? Just like Hashem is creating this leaf with all its details, Hashem is creating me with all its details. That's Das. Or even just on focusing on the leaf, realizing, whoa, like getting to the place of like, whoa, that wonder where it actually hits you, that's Das. And once you have Das, you're going to start having awe and love of God, right? It's going to lead to one's emotions. So through contemplation on his unfathomable and infinite greatness, a person will experience love of God, burning his heart like a flame, like fiery flashes. His soul will thirst and pine, desire and longing to cleave to the blessed Ein Sof with all its heart and might. So Tanya can be quite the romance book, okay? Tanya is really teaching us how to have a full-on, passionate relationship with God. And so he's saying that this kind of burning love, it's like a fiery flashes, right? So this is like, not just like, yeah, God and I are tight. This is like a love story of deep, intimate passion that the godly soul wants us to be able to experience with God. So the mission is get the animal to love God. Meaning, the moral of the story is if just my godly soul is on fire for God, it's not actually going to lead to ruling over a small city, because the godly soul wants that, but the animal soul has other plans in mind. So the only way that this mission is actually going to be accomplished is if I take hold of the water of the animal soul. That evil element of water is the desire for worldly pleasures. So if I can influence the godly soul, if the godly soul can influence the animal soul to not just think of pleasures in terms of instant gratification, but actually realize that there's much more of a geschmack, there's much more pleasure in higher purpose, in meaning. And, there's going to be a lot more pleasure in eating this donut once I say a blessing on it, and it's actually going to fill me up and give me a deeper pleasure. Then I can actually let the right side of the heart, the love that's fiery, fiery flashes in the right side of the heart is going to spill over to the left side of the heart, and that's how you get to a place of B'chol Levavcha, right? We want to love our God with all of our heart, like we say in Shema. And if you look at the Hebrew in the text here, the word Levavcha that we say in Shema is with 2 bases, and they look like little 2 halves of a heart, right? So I have to love Hashem with both of my hearts, with my animal soul and with my godly soul. So first, through fathoming God's awesomeness, right? It's going to lead to fill my right side of my heart, the godly soul headquarters, secondary headquarters with love. And from there, it's going to spill over to the left side of the heart and get my animal soul an education about what true pleasure is. Meaning, my animal soul is not bad. We keep saying that. It just needs to be educated, but a higher level pleasure. And once it is, then I have all this right? They said the animal soul is in the left side of the heart. We have this oxygenated, pumping, ready to go, passionate, ready to be used for God. So we definitely want to get the animal soul on board. So we want to be shifting from lust to love. This transformation of the animal soul's lust to a love of God entails rising to the level of ahava rabba, abundant love. A love surpassing even the level of the powerful love like fiery flashes, as mentioned earlier. Meaning to really get my animal soul on board and get it from a place where it's just interested in worldly pleasures and teach it about a higher level of pleasure, we need to really bring on the pleasure. And godly pleasure, if you've ever experienced it, which I think we all have on some way, like, is the most intense, deep, powerful, lasting pleasure. And so we need to give it a full-on experience. And this is going to be a different type of love. So we're going to talk about that love. Later we'll move on to talk about what that type of love is. Thank you for taking the time to learn today's Tanya. And just for food for thought for today, think about who's ruling over the small city right now. Who's ruling over your thoughts, speech, and actions, right? As I'm yelling at someone because I'm frustrated, who's in charge of the small city? Who's the king? My godly soul or the animal soul? And we constantly want to be crowning the godly soul as king. Like in Rosh Hashanah, we crown God as king. It's coronation day. We're crowning God as king. It's also crowning the part of Hashem within me as king, right? Letting this idea of I believe in God, that's nice, but like where are my thoughts, speech, and actions at? Believing in God, it needs to come into practicality and action to the point that I actually allow Hashem to be the king in my life. Every single blessing we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. God is king of the world. God's also the king of my inner world. And so realizing that I want God to be the king over my inner world. How do I do that? I crown the godly soul as king. I give the godly soul power to express itself in my thought, speech, and action. And the way I do that is through contemplating on holy thoughts, which are going to lead to godly emotions, which are going to lead to godly actions. Thank you and have a fantastic